Welcome to a brand new episode in the Science and Technology Unleashed series. My name is Rahel Ramzanli, and I will be your host for this episode. Maulana Hazri Muhammad said, in keeping with our past traditions and in response to our present needs, we must go out and find the best of the world's knowledge, wherever it exists. Join us as we explore the world of robotics today. This field is evolving quickly and has the potential to completely alter how our world functions. Our guest today will help us understand how robotics is changing not only our conception of the physical world that we inhabit, but also the very nature of our societies. Our first guest is Dr. Malika Meghani, an assistant professor at the Singapore University of Technology and Design, with research interests including multi-robot coordination, decision-making, and planning under uncertainty. She has a PhD in computer science from McGill University and has been recently featured in the Global 2019 Watch List for Women in Robotics and 2020 World's 50 Most Renowned Women in Robotics.
Hi, I'm Malika Meghani. I'm an assistant professor at Singapore University of Technology and Design. My research interest is in robotics, and I have a master's degree in electrical engineering and a PhD in computer science, both from McGill University in Canada. Before I was an assistant professor, I was leading a lab at Singapore MIT Alliance for Research and Technology. I have worked my whole career in field robotics domain, and I really enjoy that. As a kid, I was really fascinated to know that you can actually convert simple electricity and put them through some electronics and then see these beautiful images on a computer screen. And that really led me into electronics and communication engineering. From there, I was really curious to know about how things move out in the world and how they interact, and that got me into robotics and specifically field robotics, where the robots go out in the unstructured world and move around to find the right, to do the task more efficiently. I started off in India as an undergrad in bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering, and as I said, that led me into more curiosity about knowing how things move out in the world. So I got into robotics, and there were no robotics majors in India, so I tried to pursue my career somewhere in Canada because that's where my family was and is, and that took me to McGill, where I first started off in electrical engineering and then moved into computer science major for my PhD. My research interest is primarily in field robotics, and I have worked with ground robots like self-driving cars to marine robots like surface vehicles and underwater robots. I've looked at applications for marine robotics for search and rescue domain, and also coral reef monitoring. One of the robots that you see in the background, these are very useful in patrolling and surveying. Specifically in this time of pandemic, a lot of applications have been emerged where they are used for making sure people are wearing masks at public places. They're keeping social distancing with 2 meters apart. So these robots have now become like the virtual police patrolling robots. My work with self-driving cars is to have them autonomously function in urban environments, and specifically looking at these corner cases where if there are situations such as like an illegally parked car or cars which are moving pretty slowly, then autonomous vehicles should be able to make a decision that given the speed of the vehicle in front, it should be able to overtake that vehicle and go towards its final destination. Or in terms of emergency vehicles who are intending to pass you by, the self-driving cars should be able to give them way in those situations. So my work is more in terms of planning and decision making under uncertain cases where the intents of the other drivers are not clear by use of indicators or by any other means. So the self-driving car is sort of inferring those behaviors in terms of how slow they are moving or in which lane they are moving, and how do we change the behavior of the self-driving car based on these inferences it's getting from the road. So during my PhD in grad school, I was quite fortunate enough to be working in a lab which specialized in marine robotics, and I got an opportunity to work with marine biologists who were specifically interested in coral reef monitoring. So I think robots can do a wonderful job over there by doing repeated surveys of the region and going down and collecting the video footage that is required. Each of these dives that are required to be done by marine biologists take a really long time, whereas the robots can actually go at the same location and do repeated surveys. So that's really helpful. And in the same way, you can also think of other applications that such as iceberg monitoring, and Canada is especially seeing that a lot because the icebergs are coming down from the far north, and these can cause flooding and other misfortunate events. So in order to be able to get a heads up right in time, I think robots can play a very important role in surveying and monitoring of these environmental parameters that are required. The situation looks like as if we're going to have a long transition phase where autonomous vehicles and manually driven vehicles will both be there on the road for a very long time. And that's why it's very important for the autonomous vehicles to understand the intent of human-driven vehicles and be able to integrate in such environments. So the future is more on having the integration and being able to work on this transition phase with human-driven cars and the self-driving cars side by side. So I think start early. The first step is very important because whenever you start, it looks like a huge mountain, and that sort of bars a lot of people out of the field. But once you start, that's the most difficult part. Things just fall in place after that. So a very important skill, if anybody is looking to learn and sort of get into the field, I would highly recommend learning a programming language, because that's going to be a new norm. It's going to be like a language that you know in addition to maybe English, French, and whatever languages are taught at school. Programming language would be another added advantage. I think there was no single role model, but multiple role models along the way throughout my life. As a child, I think my sisters played a very important role in influencing my career choices, and as well as my parents, because I think I learned a lot of precious, valuable traits that I have with me today. That is being strong in terms of challenges, and also being hardworking and never giving up. While at school, I think I had several teachers which were quite inspiring and led me in the direction to where I am today. During grad school, my advisor was my biggest role model, and he is to date. So I'm really grateful for having these role models along the way, which help me guide and shape my future. So I think there are always a lot of failures along the way, and what best we can do is to reach out to people, because once you come out of your comfort zone and reach out, I think there are a lot of people out there to help you. I think being vulnerable is the first step towards success, because that's when you are sort of acknowledging your mistakes and or acknowledging your the traits that you don't have, and your willingness to learn starts at that point. And once you're willing to learn, I think success follows very soon. first of all, I was coming from an engineering background into computer science, so I had to work my way through computer science subjects, and then once I laid the foundation for myself, I think the most important part was to make sure that all the things that are required for a PhD degree are all checked out. And given the field that I was working in, marine robotics, and that we were in Canada, we would hardly get more than 20 minutes in summer in water to collect our data. So I think that was the most difficult part and challenging part. And that's where I think we needed to show resilience, that we just needed to keep pushing forward regardless of the situation that we were put in. And that opened up a lot of room for creativity and new innovations that we came up with.
How amazing that we can use robots to monitor icebergs and coral reefs, as well as help with search and rescue situations. And now from marine and ground robotics to space robotics. Our next guest, Dr. Jamil Sharif, an astrophysicist at MDA Robotics and Space Operations in Canada. And in the current position he's in, he works on the design and testing of the Gateway External Robotic System, which is Canada's advanced new space-based robotics contribution to the upcoming Lunar Gateway.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jamil Sharif. I'm an astrophysicist, and I'm currently a technical staff member at MDA, which is a Canadian space technology company. Now, what inspired me to get into this field is that for my PhD research in astrophysics, I was part of an international team that designed and built a balloon-borne telescope that we called SPIDER, and we traveled to Antarctica where we launched it nearly into space on the balloon up into the stratosphere. And when it's operating from there, we can't go there to repair it, and we can't even necessarily reliably operate it. So I had to help make SPIDER almost completely automated. And when it came time to leave academia and look for jobs in the private sector, I found that the experience that I had helping develop automated systems for space-based hardware was a really good fit to the work that MDA does. Having to either work in space or live in space or do science from space that can't be done from anywhere else really challenges us to solve difficult problems. And in so doing, we end up developing new knowledge and advance new technologies. And those developments end up eventually benefiting people in terms of their quality of life right here on Earth. One example I can think of is called the NeuroArm. It's a robotic arm that was developed by MDA and others, and it assists doctors in surgery. So it actually enables operations to be faster and for patients to have better outcomes and quicker recovery times. And it uses technology that was originally developed for the space station's robotic arm. Robots in space, like the Canadarm, are a way for us to carry out tasks in orbit that would otherwise be too dangerous, too expensive, or too complex to be carried out by human astronauts wearing spacesuits. So for example, right now on the International Space Station, there's this amazing duo of construction and repair robots called the Canadarm2 and Dexter. And it would not be an exaggeration to say that without them, we wouldn't have been able to build the station, keep it running all this time, and use it as a platform for deploying scientific experiments. Well, I'm actually absolutely thrilled to be part of an exciting new project in the realm of space exploration that's called the Lunar Gateway. What that is a new space station that would be in orbit around the moon instead of just in low Earth orbit like the International Space Station. So it's a collaboration of the US, Canadian, Russian, and European space agencies. But Canada's contribution to the Lunar Gateway is going to be a brand new robotic system. And it fulfills a very similar role to the role fulfilled by Canadarm2 and Dexter on the International Space Station, but it needs to be almost completely automated because the plan is for the Lunar Gateway to be unoccupied much of the time. I think that space robotics in general are tending towards a greater use of automation and maybe even bringing in the usage of AI, artificial intelligence. And that has applications not just for space exploration, but even in commercial space scenarios. So you could envision perhaps the automated assembly and repair of commercial space satellites. So that's potentially a very exciting new application of these technologies. People who work with me at MDA have a variety of different technical backgrounds. Most of them have an aerospace engineering master's degree, but some of them, like myself, are PhDs in physics or astronomy or chemistry or planetary science. I think that more so than any particular major, the most important skill that one could sort of cultivate and develop in order to contribute to tomorrow's knowledge economy is how to think algorithmically and how to think quantitatively. So I think that's increasingly true in today's economy, so many sectors of which are going to be driven by automation and by AI, not just even in STEM-related fields, but everywhere. And there's a lot of surprisingly deep mathematics that underpins all of that. So if you can develop these algorithmic thinking skills, it means that you could potentially have marketable skills regardless of whether the application is finance or developing a smartphone app that shows you customized products based on your past shopping choices. So it has a broad range of applicability. And that's why I think that STEM majors have been increasingly in demand, but particularly math and physics PhDs. One of the most important things that youth can do is to start early when it comes to developing these algorithmic problem-solving skills. And a lot of that is the kind of exploratory learning that happens outside the classroom. So if you can join a coding camp, or if you can teach yourself how to code online based on online course modules, or even in the realm of engineering and hardware skills, if you can join a program like FIRST Robotics, for example, FIRST, that's actually a really excellent way for kids to get their feet wet when it comes to designing and building hardware. My parents have always supported my decisions and my academic journey, regardless of the fact that they knew that choosing to pursue a pure science major and go into pure science research and academia was potentially a long and circuitous path to job security. They knew that, but they didn't provide too much judgment or too many preconceptions. They always gave me the benefit of their greater experience, but they also always supported me in pursuing my passions and my dreams. And I think that's the biggest contribution a parent can make to his or her child, is to provide that support in the pursuit of a child's passion. And when it's coupled with hard work, it always pays off. So my biggest and most important mentor in my career was my former PhD supervisor, Professor Bart Netterfield. He's an astrophysicist at the University of Toronto. And I was really lucky to have a thesis supervisor who actually acted as a mentor, in the sense that he was always concerned about helping me to reach my goals, whether they be scientific goals or career goals. But on top of that, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people in aerospace, I've always found Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield quite inspirational, especially the way that he engages in public outreach and he makes space exploration fun and he makes it accessible to everyone. Up until 2 years ago, I thought of myself as a scientist, and I thought that I was going to be continuing on this path of academic research in the field of astrophysics. And for me, that wasn't just a job, it was a calling, it was an identity. But as many of you may already know, the path to a permanent position in academia is a long one, with no guarantee of success. If your goal is to become, say, a university professor, that may not happen on the time scale you want and in a location of your choosing. And like most people in the world, I had other constraints. In fact, at that period in time, 2 years ago, it was very important for me to be able to find a permanent position in the Greater Toronto area as soon as possible for a variety of reasons. And so the immediacy of that need sort of drove me away from academia and into the private sector, where I would be a step removed from the pursuit of those scientific questions that I loved. And whether to do that and how to do it, if so, is a challenge that I think a lot of my colleagues are facing as well. It's a difficult decision, And it's hard. It takes a lot of soul searching to reevaluate one's identity, to reevaluate one's goals, and to redefine what a successful outcome is, to rethink what that might look like beyond just getting a professorship. Especially since when I started the process of this transition, I had 0 leads for jobs in industry. But it's about perseverance, and it's about having that adaptability and the ability to pivot. So graduates and workers in today's job market really need to be able to think about how their present day skills might be transferable to the problems that will be faced by society in the future. I've been doing a lot of outdoor activities. I'm really into running and hiking, but I'm also a major photography buff, so I like getting out into nature and taking landscape photos or taking photos of my urban surroundings. And as an astronomer, of course, I also really enjoy stargazing, so the night sky is also often the subject of my photography.
It was exciting to learn about the Lunar Gateway, a new space station in orbit around the moon. In Islam, faith and the physical world are inseparable. The Quran refers to natural phenomena and the order and harmony of the universe as signs of divine law and divine mystery. Mankind is encouraged to view the pursuit of knowledge about the physical world as a spiritual responsibility and the application of that knowledge as a spiritual obligation. Our next segment is on Islam and science.
From the wheel to electric cars, from the saw to the Da Vinci robotic-assisted surgical equipment, innovation is constant. It transforms the way in which we interact with the world in an attempt to improve our quality of life. Electricity led to lighting and refrigeration, and the telephone to smartphones. But with the introduction of new innovations comes uncertainty and unintended consequences. It requires ethical considerations. Will an innovation promote or adversely affect the well-being of humanity and the environment? In the past, scientists living in Muslim civilizations made significant contributions to scientific discoveries, technology, and innovation, and aided in developing thought leadership towards what is considered the norm today. Our everyday calculations of adding and subtracting, or perhaps solving for unknown mathematical quantities by using algebra, is linked to Al-Khwarizmi. Al-Khwarizmi introduced the Indian numerals 1 to 9 as well as 0 into Arabic. These numerals were written slightly differently in eastern and western regions of Muslim lands. The western ones were introduced to Europe and came to be known as Arabic numerals. He also introduced the place value system used in India, whereby the value of a number depended on its position. This system simplified everyday calculations and over time became the standard practice. The Book of Ingenious Devices, written by the Musa brothers, is another example. It contains designs for self-filling lamps, long mechanical arms, useful for scooping items from the bottom of rivers or lakes, and automatic controllers. In the area of optics, Ibn al-Haytham combined his understanding of mathematics and physics to better understand the behavior of light. Through his experiments, he demonstrated that vision is the result of light rays entering into the eye rather than the predominant view of visual rays being emitted from the eye. Ibn al-Haytham is credited with the discovery of the magnifying glass and the pinhole camera. Today, innovators continue in this tradition of designing, developing, and testing new devices that respond to the changing needs of our times. As God's trustees, humans have been given the gift of the intellect, and in being able to reason, we can distinguish between right and wrong. It therefore becomes imperative that our innovations are undertaken in an ethical manner, sensitive to the impact such innovations may have on the society of today and the generations of tomorrow.
Our next segment covers an exciting weekly rundown of global news on emerging technology, scientific trends, and other extraordinary articles. These have been handpicked to broaden your horizons and challenge you to think critically and are narrated by artificial intelligence.
An international team of researchers has developed a way to use artificial intelligence to predict the risk of a patient developing cardiovascular disease. For over 100 years, doctors have peered into the eyes of patients looking for changes in retinal vasculature, blood vessels in the retina that can reflect the impact of high blood pressure over a period of time. Such an impact can be an indicator of impending cardiovascular disease. Over time, medical scientists have developed instruments that allow eye doctors to get a better look at the parts of the eye most susceptible to damage from hypertension and have used them as a part of a process to diagnose patients that are likely to develop the disease. Describing an image accurately, and not just like a clueless robot, has long been the goal of AI. So this story is a big milestone for AI that could genuinely help the visually impaired. In 2016, Google said its artificial intelligence could caption images almost as well as humans, with 94% accuracy. Now Microsoft says it's gone even further. Its researchers have built an AI system that's even more accurate than humans, so much so that it now sits at the top of the leaderboard for the no-caps image captioning benchmark. It's now offering the new captioning model so any developer can bring it into their apps. Optogenetics is a technology that uses light of different frequencies to control the brain. It has been used to incept memories in mice, decipher brain signals that lead to pain, reverse depression, overwrite memories, and more. Unfortunately, the treatment requires gene therapy and brain surgery to implant optical fibers into the brain. A team of researchers has unveiled an upgraded version of optogenetics that doesn't require surgery. It can be used to reprogram the brains of mice with light pulses that pass through the skulls of mice. The new technique still requires gene therapy, as it is the key to making neurons respond to light. Residents of Singapore will soon use their faces to sign in to pay taxes and access over 400 digital services. 4 million people will be able to access government services and more through a new facial verification feature in its national identity program. Dubbed SingPass Face Verification, the new feature allows users to securely log into their accounts without the need to remember passwords, and it is meant to be used at public kiosks and on home computers, tablets and mobile phones. Scientists have used seismic waves to create a universal scaling for the sense of touch, paving the way for hyper-realistic virtual reality. The universal law of touch theory was created by researchers at the University of Birmingham, who used mathematical modeling of touch receptors in humans and other animal species. By applying the mathematics of earthquakes to model how vibrations travel through the skin, the team discovered that vibration receptors beneath the skin respond to waves in the same way regardless of age, gender, or even species.
Studying science and technology can develop some of the key skills that are important for the future world of work, such as problem solving, analytical, and critical thinking. Let's hear what Maulana Hazrimam said about the importance of education.
The most important thing we can learn or teach at any school in a world of perpetual change is the ability to go on learning. None of us have all the answers. Quite often, we don't even know what questions to ask. Nor can we discern the road ahead by looking in a rear-view mirror. Past lessons must constantly be renewed and reapplied as we adapt to new technologies and new expectations.
Thank you again for watching this week. Our exploration continues next week, and we look forward to seeing you for the next episode of Science and Technology Unleashed.